everyone. I'm a stickler for time, so we're going to start on time today. But we want to welcome you to Tuesdays for Teachers and getting students ready for reentry. My name is Adora Beard. I'm one of 9 state relationship managers here at GED Testing Service who work with your state leaders, and I oversee community and partner outreach and professional development on behalf of the GED Testing Service. It's so good to have you join the Tuesdays for Teachers because today we'll help you gain some practical strategies to make learning relevant across a wide range of careers and help students see how their education supports successful reentry. Our intention today is to guide corrections instructors in linking their teaching to both GED success and a smoother transition back into society. So before I hand this over to our education consultant, Susan Pittman, let's be mindful of a few things. This session is being recorded, and so we want you to keep your sound muted to limit background noise. But I also want you to know that the recording and all of its associated materials will be posted on the GED website at ged.com, and under the Educator and Admins tabs, you'll go to Educators and then select Professional Development, and you will see the Tuesdays for Teachers series. As we attempt to get the recording and the materials posted within 72 hours, around about 3 days, you'll be able to download the certificate. If you are turning it into your supervisor for PD, you can download that yourself. You don't have to wait for us. You can just do it yourself. My colleague Jana will be monitoring chat, probably along with other state relationship managers in the chat. So please use that chat feature to ask any questions that you have, and we will address them. Now, I'll just hand this on over to Susan Pittman, and she'll get us started. Susan?
All right, thank you, Adora. I appreciate it. One thing I'm going to start with today is I want to know where everybody's from. So if you would type into the chat what state you're in or what facility maybe you work for, and just to give us an idea of where everyone's coming from. So if you'll take just a minute to do that, that would be greatly appreciated. Okay, I see people out of DC and Maryland, um, Michigan, Virginia, Texas. Hi, Texas. Glad to have you with us. Um, Fredericksburg, Virginia. This is great. I am so glad to see people from all over. It's a real pleasure to have everybody with us. Oh, Cipriani, we have hello from Phoenix. Okay, that's excellent. Glad to have you with us. As we go through today, I mean, right now, the whole idea of reentry is such a big deal for all of you and for programs across the country. And the thing is that primarily, though, a lot of people aren't real sure where they fit within reentry. And so today, what we're going to do is we're going to discuss the services provided by reentry programs. And then we're going to identify areas where you, as a teacher, can make some connections to show how students can learn skills that will be there for the GED test, but also will be there to support them as they go through the reentry process. And one of the things we'll discuss are some simple ways that you can contextualize your instruction so that it ties back to it. And one of the things I want to do as we go through is to share some sample activities that you could consider for the classroom. I know quite often people will say, well, is this really on the test? Well, when it comes to the skills, yeah, the skills are there. It's just the context in which they're used when they're used out in the real world versus what you would see on a test itself. So let's get started and um, see if we can go through all of this. And hopefully, well, if you have questions, I want you to answer them. You know, the real purpose and goal for reentry programs is that we really want to reduce recidivism. So we don't want to see that revolving door where they're coming back into corrections, that it's so essential that we promote employment so that when someone exits the system, that they have a real shot at being successful in that. And it goes further than that, though, because how are you going to be successful if you don't have stable housing and basically healthy relationships? Many of the students that we serve within corrections, they don't necessarily have the best relationships with members of their families. So that's something that we want to help them develop as they work through the program. So when we talk about all this, everything is about how we pull things into kind of reintegration programs. We want them to feel empowered, that they can connect back into their communities and have productive lives. But if some of the pieces aren't there, then it creates more problems for them as they move along. So this is just a chart which, shows the full impact of reentry and how students flow throughout this chart. So I wanted to provide this one for you because there are parts here where you can be involved facility-based education, but also now there's a move out to community-based education facilities. And also there's potentials, as we go through here about persisting in programs and earning credentials as they move through. We want students who go into the reentry process to be successful. And that means that they've got to be able to obtain long-term employment that provides a living wage and has opportunities for them as they move forward. There's so many things already stacked up against many of the people that have been incarcerated have. So if we can help in removing some of those pieces, then so much the better. So we're going to take a look at different pieces here in terms of the types of services and then how we as adult educators can connect to them. Because when we talk about looking at employment services, there are a lot of services that are available through reentry about connecting with employers, their job search strategies, there's career development and guidance that is available. The other thing that we know as a part of reentry is about vocational training and skills development. Some of you may have within your own programs vocational programs or IETs, integrated education and technology programs. All of those are about getting marketable skills, improving employability, and boosting confidence. But we want them to be able to take what they have learned from inside and actually be able to move that out and put it to use. There are workforce readiness programs that are available, which speak to interview skills, training, workplace etiquette, all of those types of things. And I want you to be thinking as I go through these different types of programs that are available about how we in our GED, ABE, GED programs can connect with some of those services that are outside. From a housing assistance perspective, people who enter the reentry programs, they may have either temporary housing or shelters where they can immediately move into and have assistance so that they have stable housing. Because if they don't have stable housing, how then are they going to have any stability within their lives? They need that shelter, that safe environment with the ability to then transition over into a program where you have more long-term housing solutions. And we know there are a number of different types of services that are available out there. The main thing that we have to make sure is that as our students transition into something like a housing assistance program, there's some roadblocks that can come up for those students, not understanding how the system works. And so maybe this is one of those times when we have some opportunities to help with that. The other thing that we find with students is there's support that's available out there to help them provide, landlord negotiations and assistance with applications. But think in terms of what you can do in the classroom to have them kind of a jump start ready for that part of the process. In addition, there are a number of health and wellness services that are provided. There's a lot of support that's available for former inmates, those who have been incarcerated, but making that transition from inside to outside, sometimes our students just don't have the coping strategies that are needed for that, or how to build that sense of resilience. It's like I have been in a situation where everything is structured right down to the last minute. Now I'm in a reentry program, and there's a lot of freedom, there's a lot of flexibility within this. And how do I not fall back into some of the old ways that I may have done before? And of course, there's education and skill building programs, whether they're in institutions themselves or they're community based. But we want them to be able to transition from something maybe they have within the institution out into the community. And also, we have higher education opportunities for those students that we work with and move them through GED, get a high school credential. What are the next steps? And one of the things that we can do with our students within the programs is really to talk about what's next. The GED, to me, is not an ending, it's a beginning. It's a way to open a door to move into some other areas. And so, how can we make students aware of those types of things and feel like they can be successful in that process? Beyond that, there are other areas where students, when they transition over to reentry programs, they have an opportunity to work on things such as building their communication skills, which helps with jobs. Financial management, because if you're getting a paycheck and you're having to develop a budget and you have to look at different programs that are providing assistance, there's a real need to have an understanding of some of the basics of finance. And let's face it, for many of our students, they lived in a cash only society. They maybe have never had a banking account of any kind. And so, how can we connect some of those pieces into it? And we also, from the standpoint of looking at legal aid and advocacy, there are plenty of programs within reentry that provide that legal aid. That's not something, of course, that we do, but at least we should be, as teachers, knowledgeable about the types of services that are available. The other thing and one last thing is financial literacy and budgeting assistance. And I'm going to share with you some resources that you can use in your GED program to help in this area, just as well with students who are incarcerated as those who are not. So let's take a look. What can break, and we call it break, a returnee's success? There's sometimes that we have students who come back because of environmental or contextual areas. It may be health issues. It may be reluctant employers who don't want to hire someone who's been incarcerated. But also, we have reluctant families. Many of our students don't have a support network out there. Um, they kind of lost that support along the way. And we also have the idea, too, of reluctant landlords who don't necessarily want to have housing provided to someone who's been incarcerated. But from an internal perspective, sometimes it is the inmates' issues, their strengths, and their limitations. If they lack basic literacy and math skills, that can hold them back from even being able to hold a job. The lack of a high school credential, the limited occupational skills. And one of the biggest areas, a lack of self confidence, a belief that they actually can be successful outside of those gates. So we have a number of different things that impact individuals who are incarcerated and whether or not they can be successful when they leave your program and your institution itself. So, we're going to look at 5 different areas where we can make connections into the classroom: workforce readiness, vocational skills, housing, financial literacy, health and wellness. And what we're going to do over the next few sections is I'm actually going to talk with you about some specific things that you can do with your students in the classroom now as they're preparing for reentry, to help get them ready for this part of the process. So, workforce readiness, we think about it and we look, okay, what can I really do with that? Well, you can help students as they're getting ready for an interview or learning how important it is to get to an interview or job on time. And you think, okay, that's one thing, but how does that tie in to the GED test? And how can I kind of use certain skills to fit both? Well, when they're preparing for an interview, the returnees often have difficulty obtaining employment because, one, they were incarcerated, they have gaps in employment, and they don't plan for an interview. So when they go to interact with a potential employee, they really don't know how. So what can you do? One thing that you can do within the classroom is to use what I call as a what, why, how chart. And this is really to give your student in the classroom an opportunity to just learn about them, number one, themselves and what they have to offer, but also how they can take that information and then put it together to fill out a job application. So, what, why, and how? The what I know is I know that I can be a productive and capable employee. Okay. A lot of people can say that, but what are you going to do to back it up? Well, why am I certain I can do the job? Look at what a student can do in terms of adding in different reasons why. I take initiative, and they can go through and then talk about how have I demonstrated these skills in the past. So I take initiative. Well, how do I know that as a potential employer? I took and passed optional courses. I earned my GED. I completed the initial reentry program. So those are things that I have done. I'm motivated. Okay. How can I show that I'm motivated? I take an opportunity to prove myself. I support my family and I meet probation requirements. again, what we're trying to do is get students to understand that when they go in to talk with a potential employer, they can't just go in and say, well, I would be good at this job. Why would you be good at this job? How can you prove to me that you would be good at this job? We've used in the past what, why, how as a way for students to begin the writing process. Based on what is included here on this slide, a student could actually write up 3 paragraphs talking about different things that they can do. And what are we doing here? Well, in this last column, we're using evidence. Sound familiar? We use evidence when we go to write our evidence-based extended response. So we're laying the foundation here for a student to organize their thoughts, plan out what they want to say, and then have that information handy. I use this activity with teachers in a variety of different situations, some in corrections, some in other areas. And we even had some students, and this was up in upstate New York, that students would actually keep copies of this to use later on when they went in to fill in an application, because they already had things written out and they didn't have to just try to come up with them off the top of their heads. So we're doing 2 things here. We're looking at it as organizing writing skills, which you could do for the GED test, and organizing your thoughts that you would go in to interview for a job. So that's part 1. Now, we talk about getting to an interview on time. So, one of the issues that students have some difficulty with on the GED test is called elapsed time. And they're given a situation and they have to know what time would you start something. Or it may be that they've got to do a sequence of events that has occurred. So in this particular case, I give the student a question. So my interview is at 1:10. I should arrive 5 to 10 minutes early. It's a 24-minute walk and takes a few minutes for me to get out the door. What time should I start putting my shoes on? Now think about the math skills that are required in order to do this. So we have to be aware of time and elapsed time. So I have to start with my problem and work backwards. So I have to identify what are the most important facts of the problem. This is just like working a problem when you're getting ready for the GED test itself. I have my important facts, 1:10, 5 to 10 minutes early, few minutes to get out the door, and a 24-minute walk. As a result of that, I have to start putting on my shoes at 12:33. That is all what a student would have to do within working with elapsed time. Plus, we're reinforcing for students that whenever they do go and they do have to do interviews, they have set times for interviews. You can't be late. So how do you ensure that you're not late? You work backwards in order to determine that. And you could set up any kind of similar scenarios and have students solve the problems. One, it allows you to go in and make sure that they do have an understanding of elapsed time, but also to watch and make sure that the students, as they're going through, get the main details from a math problem itself. Next. So, vocational training. There are probably a lot of you who have institutions where you have IETs that are currently in operations. I know that in, for example, within Kentucky, there were quite a few programs like ServSafe, so that They could get certifications on food handling. There are other programs that are out there. Welding is actually one. So again, these are the programs where they're learning specific vocational skills. And so what we want to do is, as adult ed teachers, we want to go and work with those who are working in the vocational end of it to see, is there anything that we can do in our classrooms to help support? Maybe it's in learning the vocabulary. In math, like in welding, there may need to be some very specific math skills that students learn. But those are all different areas that you want to think about. And the thing that we're looking at here is there are a number of different industry sectors where students who are coming through reentry have an opportunity to get involved in those types of with those types of employers, which can mean having a living wage. Pardon me for my cough, but anyway, this is fall allergies. So what can you do? I mean, think about it. You're sitting there in your classroom, in your facility, and you say, well, what can I do about housing? I'm not out there searching for people to find appropriate housing for when they leave our institution. Well, there are some things that you can do. And in part, it comes back to helping students build their reading skills. So if you would, I'd like for you to take about 3 minutes and read through this passage. So as you read through this, what did you find was the most important information that a student would need to know when they're learning about Elise? What do you feel was most important? And you can pop it into the chat box. Okay, from Jean, duration and cost. Absolutely, you're going to have to know those things, because otherwise, how are you going to be able to determine whether or not you can afford it over the long haul? It may sound fine for the first month, but after that, what happens? Deborah, yes, read and understand the lease, which means that I have to be able to identify the details within this. I could actually do an activity with this one where we take each one of those paragraphs separately and take a look at what's the significance of each. What are the main things I'm looking for? What's the problem with any vocabulary that I may have in here? I may have a problem understanding what's the term tenancy. Maybe that's something I don't understand the terms of your tenancy. Um, those all become really important issues. And Lee, you bring up a good point as well as Adriana, where other expenses, hey, it's not just about paying the rent. There's more to it than that. And that's where we have especially younger students who have been incarcerated. They have a real problem with that. Understanding that there's more to it than just the rent that you're paying each month. You have deposits that you have to put down. You have utilities that you have to pay. So this is a type of reading activity that you can use with students where the vocabulary is not that hard in the long run, but it can give you a lot of different information. And we really are checking to see if our students can understand what is explicitly stated, because that is one of the skills required on the RLA test, as well as social studies, as well as science. So keep that in mind. Okay, we move from there and we look at this one. Okay, now I have a whole new idea for students. So this one is, I call the activity to rent or not to rent. That is the question. And what do you take into consideration? So in this particular activity, what I have two, oops, sorry. I have two apartments and I'm providing information about each. Now I want the students to compare and do the pros and cons of apartment one. I want them to do the same thing with apartment two. Now I'm bringing in a new term. Are there any red flags that students should be aware of? And then for them to actually determine which department would they select and why. Is fine, depending on the circumstances that a person is in. So if you look at apartment one, you have a rent that's cheaper, $800 per month. There's $100 application fee. There's a security deposit, but it's $400. There's no pet, no parking fees, but you've got the water, electricity are the responsibility of the tenant. Okay, so 2 bedrooms, 1 bath. Now, and oh, also, it's near airport and mass transit. So if you don't have a car, mass transit's going to make a difference for you. Now we take a look over here at the other side. 2 bedrooms, 1.5 bath, and it's a large complex 5 miles away from the airport. $1,100 per month, and that's electricity and water included. Well, over here, it was only $800 a month. $300 difference. Security deposit is 1 month's rent. Wow, that's a lot more than my security deposit here. I have a pet fee. I have a parking fee if I have covered parking. So now what your students can do is actually they could work on this independently. Then they could go back and discuss who picked apartment one and why did they do it? Who picked apartment two? But this becomes a really important part of the process. Which apartment would you select and why, to see if the student actually pulled evidence from this in order to make their argument. So here we're working on several different things, looking at math skills, looking at that, being able to compare and contrast, show the similarities, the differences between two different passages here, all of which they do when they get ready to take the GED test. It's just not set up this way, but we're using the same types of skills. And you could set up any number of these types of activities, but having that practice, and especially for someone who they've never rented an apartment before, what is going to make the difference for them? And, what are those red flags? A red flag for me might be that it's right there at the airport and I'd have a lot of noise if I happen to be in a flight path. Another one over here, red flag for me, might be that, yeah, well, I have, there's no application fee required, but boy, they're going to stick it to me when it comes to a security deposit. So I have to look at those different pieces that are included there. Financial literacy. That's another area that's an issue for students as they move out into the community. Back in the day, long time ago, and working in GED classes, there were often times that I would have students who would ask me to help them when they set up checking accounts and how did they balance a checkbook. And in one case, I even had a student who wanted to learn how to write checks. Um, but those were students who maybe had very, very limited literacy skills. Now we look at it from a standpoint of students having everything from, credit cards to Venmo to different ways to pay things. But when you're first moving out as a re-entering student, you may need to set up a checking account. And how do you go about doing that? And how do you work with a check register? If you want some great resources that are free to use in the classroom, use the link at the bottom of the slide, fdic.gov. They have tremendous resources, lesson plans already prepared, and it's an area on the FDIC website that's called Money Smart. Each month, you can sign up, and each month they'll actually send you updates to say, there's new lessons that are included under such and such. I've just found it to be an amazing website, and I like anything that's free. So here we have Asif, who is opening up a checking account. Now we actually have a whole laundry list of transactions. And what can I do? There's my bank book, so I can actually go through and show how to do payments and deposits, and move through here and include balances. I think actually there is when you have this program set up here, you can pull down a Excel spreadsheet that will help in this process. But this was just, I copied this particular one off. Another thing, sometimes there's sticker shock when somebody's been incarcerated and they come back out and they look at what things used to cost versus what things cost today. um, can be a little bit surprising. And there is a very real thing out there called shrinkflation. Uh, there used to be that you could buy a half gallon or a gallon of ice cream and it was a certain cost for it. And, no big deal. Now, if you go to buy that same half gallon or gallon, you'll find that it's a few ounces short of that. In this particular case, we have these Oreo ice cream cakes. And you'll notice that in 2022, it was $16.98, and you got 48 ounce. In 2024, it shrank a little bit, and now it's 46 ounces, but the price is higher. So even though the boxes may look the same, shrinkflation has taken place. This particular lesson came from a site called Yummy Math. I love it because it has so many different activities that I can do with students that are already developed. In this case, this would be an opportunity for students to work on percentage increase. And again, a math skill that students would need for the GED test. You don't have to join Yummy Math to get access to the lessons, but you can, and I like it because it was developed by teachers. Couple more things here as we look through. Excuse me. We're going to talk, this is about mental health and health and wellness. One of the things, if you've been with me before, you've heard me talk about a lot is mindfulness. And the fact that, especially for students who are coming in, or they are in corrections, they're looking at being able to go through the reentry process. Mindfulness can make a huge difference for those students, because it's that practice of being aware of the present moment and not being so scattered among what all is going on around you. It helps students be aware of their thoughts. Most importantly, for those who are in corrections, to actually pause before they take action, because I know that can be something that happens. For many of us, mindfulness becomes something that we can be rather than do. We're constantly doing. We're taking care of all these different things, or we're in constant motion. Sometimes it's nice to just be instead, to focus and also adjust their attitude about different situations. The research is really clear. Mindfulness does matter. It impacts academics, our mental health, and also our social behavior. And so for someone who is moving from being incarcerated back out into free society, there's so many things that can impact them, that having that sense and that understanding of mindfulness can make a difference. And often people think of mindfulness and they think, oh, this is kind of like meditation. And it is in a way, but it's kind of retraining the brain to pause, to take a moment to relax before you move on doing something else. And for someone who may have a bit of a short temper or may get frustrated easily, this is something that they can do. Excuse me. So here's what I'd like for you to do. We're going to do just a very quick exercise that you can do in class. And so what I'd like for you to do, excuse me, one second.
So I hope that Susan is okay. I'm not really sure where she was going with this next slide, but I'm sure she'll be back in a moment. If you'll just give us a few minutes, I'm sure she'll be able to return to us.
And Adora, I'm sure Susan could probably hear us. So I will just mention that in the chat, the one question we have several
Mhm.
comments and stuff. The one question we have that I'm sure Susan's probably going to answer is, did you share a resource for mindfulness practice or exercises? And I'm sure that she will have something to say about that.
Absolutely, she will. So let's give her a minute or two. Um,
But as you
Yes,
reflect on oh, there she is. Go
this
ahead,
is a
Susan.
matter of having fall allergies. So,
mhm.
and also talking a lot. But thank you, Adora and Jonna, both of you, for stepping in here real quick. if you look at the lower left-hand side of the screen, you will see a website. It's called Transforming Education. And it is an excellent website with lots of resources dealing with mindfulness, transforming education. And you can just do a Google search for that, and it will tell you a lot. But one of the things that you do when you're working with mindfulness is actually start the process with having students be able to calm themselves. I like to do this type of activity with a group of people when you first start the day. When everybody's coming in, getting settled in, before starting instruction, to just take a couple minutes and have everybody just chill out. So what I'd like for you to do is I'm going to ask you to close your eyes. Don't be looking at your screen. Instead, I want you to close your eyes, and I want you to take your shoulders and pull them up close to your ears. So you're tightening things up. And then slowly, I want you to release them and relax. Now, I also want you to be grounded. And by that, I mean, I want your feet flat on the floor in front of you. Now, place your hands on your legs. And I want you to relax the muscles in your arms down through your wrist. Relax your back. Feel it against your chair. Now, take a deep breath. Let it out. Take another deep breath in on the count of 4. And then out. Do it again. And one last time. Now you can open your eyes. And it just gives you a little break. Just a minute, that's all we did was just a minute to go through and stop what you're doing. And especially, I know it can be kind of tricky in corrections for someone to close their eyes. But even if they just look down but are not looking at anything specific, you want them to really be able to focus when they're doing this. Transforming Education, they actually have a full script that you can go through and slowly walk a student through that, slowing down, changing the pace that you can use with them, which can make a difference. I found that if you can do this, especially before students start math classes, it gets away from that buildup that they have of that anxiety that comes to play in this. But this also can become something that they do themselves. So when they need a minute, they can close their eyes, they can relax their shoulders, and just be as opposed to doing. So if you can get started with that, that can make it much easier. one other piece that we need to keep in mind for students who are getting ready for reentry. We have a large percentage of our students who see themselves as having a fixed mindset. They think they're born with a certain level of ability, and nothing can change that. They don't believe they're in control of their own destiny. It's all someone else behind the scenes. When you have a fixed mindset, you spend your entire life trying to prove yourself over and over and over again. If you have a growth mindset, then you have a belief that, hey, I'm in control. I can learn, I can improve. I may not be the greatest at math right now, but I can change that. I can study, I can work on certain areas. And students with a growth mindset tend to believe that they're in charge of their own destiny, not someone else. We need, within corrections especially, to help our students move from the fixed mindset over to the growth mindset. You can't make them do this. All you can do is go through and set the stage for it. Henry Ford said it best, whether you think you can or that you can't, you're usually right. It doesn't matter. So if you can spend some time looking at how students respond to different things, that can help tell you a lot about having a fixed or a growth mindset. Take a look at the bottom of this slide and you'll see skillsyouneed.com. They have a tremendous number of resources on that site to help you with helping students move from one type of mindset to another. And when you're looking at this, again, you can't make it happen, but you can do feedback. You can plant the seeds for this so that it can happen when a student is ready. And a part of that is, and I know I have been guilty of this, we have to be very careful with students, and instead of praising the product, praise the process. We need to say, hey, that's great. You worked hard. Look how well you've done. The emphasis there is on you as a person. You have made a difference. You have changed what you're doing, rather than you're really good at writing. Now I'm focusing on a product, the writing itself. So I want to try to make the change to praise the process. And I think this is probably one of the more difficult things for me, because you just have a habit of doing certain types of praise, and that's how you work with students. But it can make a difference. So now, just a couple more items here. Oops. Simple ways that you can contextualize different lessons. Think about current events. For someone who is inside, incarcerated, and not aware necessarily of a lot of things that are going on, then that can be the way that you work with lessons. I highly recommend that FDIC, and also looking at Yummy Math, because those can both make a huge difference. You can look at everyday life and use situations like I did, where I had the 2 rental apartments. And also, what is it that students want to know when they go beyond those gates? What is it they want to learn at that point in time? The other thing that you can do is you can use sample test questions. we have a number of different test questions provided to us by the GED testing service. And this particular one, some of you may have seen it before, but this passage actually talks about the Exxon Valdez oil spill. And you'll notice that what it's asking is, which event described in the passage happened first? Well, what do most students do? They look at the first sentence up here, see what that is, and see if they can match up the answer. However, the event that occurred first is way down in this passage, which means that our students have to learn how to go through and look for details. Remember when I talked about with the housing contract, knowing what's explicitly stated? This is the same type of thing here, and it deals with sequence of events. So you can use some sample questions, and you can also take advantage of other materials that are out there. But the main thing today is that I wanted to get across before I turn it over to Jonna, who's going to talk about the hot topics, is that we're in a position within our classrooms to make a difference of how students are going to do after they leave our program, as well as the facility where we're teaching. Most of the time, though, we see our own role as I'm getting them ready for the test. So the point here is to try to match up those skills that the students is going to use on the test, as well as how they will use those skills later on. And that's the thing that we want to do as we're working with our students, so that when it comes to something as simple as banking, they have an understanding of it, while at the same time they're working on positive and negative numbers. We can do things like the shrinkflation, where students are learning about percent increase and percent decrease. And most of all, we can do a lot of reading, which we know that our students need those skills both behind bars and when they're no longer behind bars itself. So that being said, I'm going to open up and have Jonna let me know if there are any questions that people have. Oops, sorry, Jonna.
That's okay. Hi, Susan. There are no questions currently in the chat.
Okay, well, good to know. Then I shall go ahead and turn this over to you, and you can just guide me through the slides here.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. It's been a great hour so far. Just wanted to give you a heads up on a couple of hot topics we have for you this month. Again, just wanted to mention that our 2026 GD conference, and I think you can move forward one slide, is
Okay.
in Atlanta next July 29th through the 31st. And that is an amazing opportunity for everyone who attends to meet some folks on the GD team that you wouldn't otherwise meet, and to sit in their sessions and allow them to share their expertise with you. We have various strands that we offer for educators, test administrators, state administrator staff. We have a correction strand, so certainly pertinent for this group. And we look forward to seeing you at the Atlanta Marriott Marquis next year. If you are not currently receiving our in-session newsletter, I would encourage you to sign up for that. If you were to go to the educator and admins page on our website, scroll down any page in the educator and admins section of our website, has a blue banner at the bottom that invites you with one click to sign up for that newsletter. And that's one way that we have to share with you updates around the conference. When registration opens, we like to highlight our keynote speakers and various sessions that are scheduled for the 1.5 to 2 days that we're there, and would love to see you there if you can make it. Next slide. And then just recently, I thought you might be interested in some very recent updates on the GDME app. Before this week, really, we had what we called the question of the day, where anyone who had access to the app would receive one question a day to answer and receive some feedback. And what the development team has done, maybe we could go back a slide, is create what they call a core loop. And so students now have access to more than one question per day. So that they can stay engaged and have practice. All of this is based on the Kaplan book. And then if they take a GD Ready practice test, this is another update, and then go to the core loop of questions. Those questions that are highlighted are cover skills that they already showed proficiency on the practice test. Okay, so really wanting to guide them to those questions where they need more practice and not so much on the things that they've already mastered. And also now in the profile tab, they can track their time that they've participated in all things on the app, and also test scores can be found on the profile tab. Just a few reminders. Currently, the app is available in English and on iPhone, and we have a ton of teachers who use this as an opportunity to engage with their students in warm-ups or mini lessons, etc. There's a lot of different ways that teachers have found to interact with their students using the app. The team is still working on a Spanish translation and making it available in the Android store. They're working with the Google store to make that happen, and there's just some tweaks that they need to work out to meet the Google store requirements there. So that is an ongoing process, and hopefully in the very near future, we'll have an update on when that will actually be launched. And those are the hot topics I have this month.
Thank you very much, Jonna. We appreciate that. And thank you so much, Susan. We're hoping that you quickly get over your allergies soon. I know how challenging that can be. But this session was very helpful, and you provided extremely valuable information about preparing the classroom for reentry, the what, the why, the how planning, and the mindfulness thinking around fixed versus growth mindset. I think that is all really, really good to know. But let us close out now, and I appreciate you, Susan. Go get some rest. Tuesdays for Teachers sessions are held on a bi-monthly basis, and we will close out the year with a session on being held on December 9th, GED Math Test Taking Strategies and Calculator Skills Part 2 with Kelly Blair Hart. So look out for that email invitation to register for Part 2. You'll also find that Part 1 of that session recording is already on our website, which was done in March of this year. So as a reminder, which I think Jonna already put in our chat, the recording and all associated materials for this particular session and others are always posted on the GED website at GED.com under the Educator and Admins tab. So go to Educators and then select Professional Development, and you will see the Tuesdays for Teachers series. Any additional comments or questions that you have, you can always reach out to help@GED.com, which is the next slide, or maybe 2 slides, Susan. And so once you go to help@GED.com and you send us an email related to that, that's how you communicate with GED Testing Service. So depending on your question, your email will be sent to me if it is related to professional development, or your state relationship manager if it is a state-specific question. And so I want to thank Jonna for her assistance in the chat and for related to the hot topics. And Susan, again, we always appreciate you. And so we'll see you all again soon in December. Thank you. Thank you for your time today.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you.
Thank you.